Hello everyone. We've been learning lots of stuff in this class so far, and we're going to start to put a lot of the pieces together. And in this activity, we're going to create a data access component. We've talked a lot about component-based design. We're going to create a component that allows us to make AJAX calls to a web service or an API. And actually, this component that we create in this activity, we're going to use it in our React sample project. So this is going to, that components can be reused. We're going to build it and test it here, and then we're going to use it in our React sample project. Okay, so I'm at the page here that has all the starter code for this activity, and this little placeholder is for the video that I'm creating right now, so that'll be there when this video is finished. There are some things you need to know before you can make sense of what we're going to do here. We've already covered this in the class, but you need to know about promises, you need to know about AJAX, and we're going to be using the Axios library, and we need to make these AJAX calls to a web service. We don't really have one, but we can use the JSON server. That's a great tool for prototyping and testing, and that's going to act as our back end for this. So let's get started with the back end so that we have something that we can send our AJAX calls to. Now, some of you, here's what we're going to do. You know how the JSON server works. You give it a JSON file, and here's what we're going to give it. So you can go ahead and copy this right off the web page that I'm looking at right now. This will save us a lot of time here. How do we want to do this? Let's see. Let's go to, I'm going to copy this. And you can just copy that JSON. If you take a look at it, you'll see that it's an object that has a books array inside of it. And then that array is an array of objects that each represent a book with an ID, a title, and an author. So that's going to act as our data on the back end right here. Go ahead and copy that. And then we're going to go over to VS Code here. And let's create a new folder here. You'll probably be putting this in your repository for the class, but I'm just going to create a new folder right here. And oh, that's not where I want it. I'm going to create it right here. And we're going to call it book-data-access. Like that. Okay. And now inside of there, we're going to create a file. So right click on that book data access folder and choose new file. And we're going to call it book-data.json. Okay, I think you know where this is going because we've seen the JSON server in action before. Now you can go ahead and paste what we copied here, and here's our data. Go ahead and save that. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is set up the JSON server. I think you guys have already done that because we did an activity with that before. I have not actually set that up on this computer, so you can watch me while I do that again here. I'm gonna go back to my notes, and here we go. These are the notes on setting up the JSON server. I know that I don't have it installed, so here is the command to install it, and I'm gonna copy that. You don't need to do this if you've already installed the JSON server. So here in VS Code, I'm going to open up a terminal, and then I'm going to paste that command in. Now notice that it's doing npm install JSON server -g. We want to install it with -g to install it globally so we can use it anywhere and we don't need a project to use it. So that's why I added the -g there. So that'll go ahead and chug for a minute, and I'll pause the video while that goes on. Okay, so I've got the JSON server installed now, and then I'm going to go back over to the instructions here, and here's the command that we can use to run it. So there's npx, which is to execute a package, JSON server, and then we want to watch the book data JSON file that we just created. So there's the -w and then the file that we want to watch. And then we want the server to run on port 8080. So that's what the P option is for it there. I'm just going to copy that, and you can go ahead and do this with me. And then we'll go over here, and now I need to make sure that we're in the right folder here. So what I need to do is I need to cd the terminal into our book data access folder. So I'll go cd book data access like that, and now I'm in the right place to launch the server because it'll be able to find the JSON file in that same folder. So I'll paste the command in to launch the server. There we go. Hopefully it's running. So you can see here that it's running in the terminal here, and it's on localhost port 8080. If I control click on this, here we go, and there's my data, and we can run queries here, as you know. So for example, if I make a request, if I add a /1 right here, that's going to get the book with the ID of 1. So that's the first book, and so this is great because it acts as a fake backend so that we can work on our front end code. So JSON Server is just a great tool to know how to use. And now that the back end is set up, we can go ahead and start working on the front end, which is the component that we want to build right here. So what we're going to do is create a file called bookdataaccess.js. This is going to be our component. So let's go ahead and go back over to VS Code and create that. I want to create it inside of our book data access folder. So I'm going to right click on the folder, choose new file, and this we're going to call it book-data-access.js. Okay, now this is going to be an ES6 module. So unfortunately, you've had to learn two different ways of creating modules. One that we use for our Node applications, that's called CommonJS. And then here we're using ES6 modules, and this is what React projects use. So it's unfortunate that as you're learning, you have to learn two ways of creating modules and two ways of importing and exporting stuff. But we can try and talk through that together in class to try and make some sense of it. But anyways, this is going to be an ES6 module. All right, so if I go back over to the instructions here, here's the code that I want to paste into the file that we just created. So copy all of that. This is the starter code right here. Make sure you get it all and be careful not to miss any of it. So get everything there and then paste it into the file that we just created, the blog-data-access.js file. Okay, now let's have a look at this real quick here. So now, first of all, I've got a constant that should look familiar. That's the URL to our JSON server right there. So that will return all books for us right here. And then what we're doing is we're exporting a few functions. Now here I'm using classic functions with the function keyword. I could have used arrow functions. It doesn't really matter, but I just ended up using the old school functions here. And these are being exported. So we're going to create a function. We're going to add code to all these functions. Get all books. That's going to get all the books. Get book by ID. You're going to pass in an ID, and it's going to return the book that matches that ID. And then we've got one to insert a book. So we have to pass in a book object, and then that will make the AJAX call to insert the book on the JSON server. We can update a book, and then we can delete a book. Okay, so those are all exported, which means that they can be imported into other files. And we'll do that in just a minute here. If you scroll down a little bit further, I do have a function that's not exported. And that basically means that it's private. It can only be used inside of this module right here. So it's called error handler, and we'll be talking about this as we go, but this is what we're going to use for our error handler function when we want to catch any errors that might occur. But I did not export it because we want to keep it private. It's only going to be used inside of this file right here. Okay, go ahead and save your changes here. And then we got another file to set up here. I'm just going to go back over to the instructions here. Got some notes. We want to test as we go here. We always want to test our work, and we're going to be talking more about testing coming up soon in the class. But we're going to create a file to test our module here. So here we're going to create a file called test.html. So let's go on over to our folder that we're working in here. I'm going to right click on the book data access folder, choose new file, and call it test.html like that. And then I'm going to bounce back over to the website and copy all the starter code. We'll have to talk about this a little bit here too. Just copy all of it. Be careful that you get all of it, but not too much. Be very careful. Copy paste errors can drive you nuts if you're not careful. I'm going to paste it in here. Let's have a look at this real quick here. So first of all, down in the body, I've just got a bunch of buttons. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then we'll launch this on the live server in just a second here. So let's scroll up and talk about this here. I just wanted to point out a few things. Right here, we're linking to the CDN to Axios because we're going to be using Axios to make our AJAX call. So that's on line 7 right here. And then the other thing that I want to point out here is on line 8, I've got a script element, and look, its type attribute is set to module. So that means that it's going to be making use of these ES6 modules. Now you don't have to worry about this too much because it's kind of unusual what we're doing here. We're just creating a standalone web page, standalone HTML file to work with a module. Normally we're using modules inside of a React project or some other kind of project. But anyways, by setting the type equal to module, we can import all the functions from our module. So here on line 10, I'm going to close this here, give me some more space here. But here on line 10, you can see that we're importing those functions. So we're importing all the ones that we can use here and from our book data access JS file right there. Okay, and then we're waiting for the page to load. And once the page loads, we're getting a handle on all the buttons that are down below here. So, and we just got click handlers set up here. So this should all be code that you're comfortable with by now. Okay, now in order, ES6 modules only work if you're running the page on a live web server. So you can't just open this page in the browser from here. You have to hit the Go Live button, use your Go Live server. So go ahead and do that. And that will pull the page up, hopefully, and here it is. So right now, when you click all the buttons, I've just got alerts set up for each one. And we're going to replace those alerts with the real code here as we move along. Okay, now we can finally get started here. Let's move on over to VS Code, and we're going to start inside of the book data access JS file. Okay, so we've got all these empty functions right here. Okay, now the first function is going to be to get all books. So that's where we're going to start right there. What we're going to do is we're going to do this return, and then we're going to use Axios. We imported that in the HTML page that's using this module, so we have it available to us. And we want to make a GET request, so we're going to call the GET method like that. And then all I'm going to do here is just pass in that base URL constant. That's on line 1. Okay. And that's it for now. Okay, so this is interesting. Axios, all the methods that we use for Axios return promises. So basically what we're doing is we're making the GET request and then returning the promise. Okay, so you guys know a little bit about promises. You can call then and catch on a promise object. So what we're returning here is whatever the GET method returns, which is a promise. Okay, go ahead and save your changes here. And then go over to the test file here and scroll up to the event handler for BTN1. And actually you can comment out the alert there that says to do get all books. And then we're going to replace it with our code. We want to actually call the function that we were just working on in our module. So to do that, I can just call the function. So here's the one that we want to call get all books. So down here on line 16 or so, I'll go ahead and call get all books. Okay, just like that. It doesn't take any parameters. And as we just talked about, that returns a promise. So what I can do is attach a then onto it and then put in a function here to handle it. So what I think I'll do here to get started is I'll just, let's see, I'll just do this. I'll take the response, I'll call it RESP, and then I'll log it. RESP, just like that, okay? All right, go ahead and save that, and then make sure all your files are saved. Go back over to the browser here, reload the page, hit F12 because we're going to be looking at the console log, and then go ahead and press that first button right there. Okay, now here's what we got. Now remember, Axios, the promise, when the promise resolves, it returns an object that represents the response. So that's got a bunch of stuff in it. The response includes the status code, a status message. The response also includes HTTP headers here, but what we're really interested in is the data. Now that Axios calls it the data property, but what it really is it's the body of the response that comes from the server. So I wish they would have called that property body instead of data, but usually the body is the data that you're interested in. But anyways, so what we want to do is the way we want this to work really is when we're back here, we want this to be books. So that's the data that we're interested in. So I'm going to rename that parameter to books, but we're not getting the books. We're getting the entire response object. I'll show you how we can fix that in a second here. Anyways, change the console log to books. Okay, now we need to make a change back in our function, get all books. So I'm going to bounce back over to the blog data access.js file. And here's a cool thing. We mentioned this when we talked about promises. But what I can do is I can put a then right here, and I can transform whatever got returned. So here's what I want to take the response, and what I want to return is the data portion of it. So I'll set this up like that. Okay, so this is pretty cool because I can take the entire response, pass it into this arrow function, and then whatever I return is going to get passed to the next then call that's down the chain. So here, the first thing the promise does when it resolves is it returns just the data portion. Okay, so if I save this now and go back over here, I should just get the data portion, which is the books here. So let's see what happens if we refresh the page here and then reload. Now I'm just getting the books, just the data that I want. And that's the way we want this function to work. If you have a function called get all books, you would expect that it would return books, not a response object that has books in it. Okay, so that's pretty cool what we just did there. Okay, let's talk about error handling here. In our data access component here, so we're not handling any errors anywhere. So the way I want to set this up, there's different ways you could do this, but what I'd like to do is put a catch right here. So this here, I'm in the book data access.js file inside of our get all books function. I'm going to do a method chain call right here for catch, and then we're going to take the error, and then here's our handler for the error, and let's just what am I saying? We have an error handler for this. So there we go. We want to pass in our error handler function. So let's see what that does here. So let's take a look at that. Scroll down here. So it's going to console log the error message, and then interestingly enough, it just turns around and throws that error again. Let me show you why this is cool here, and you might wonder why we're doing this here. But what I can do is when an error occurs, this function, error handler, will console log it for us. But we might also want to do something else on our test page over here. So what I can do, I'm going to go ahead and save these changes, and then I'm going to go back to the test page here. And because we threw the error from our error handler function, we can catch it here, which means I can go here and add a .catch. And maybe I don't want to console log the error because our users won't see it. Maybe I want to alert the error so that the users see it. So here, I'll do this. I'll put in an arrow function that alerts the error. Okay, just like that. Okay, let's see the way this behaves right now. Now, we don't have any errors that are happening, so I can force an error to occur by going back into the module, our data access.js file, and then I can fudge the URL. I'll just remove that S. Okay, so now we're going to have an error. So let's see what happens here. Save it and reload the page here. Hit the button. Okay, now look at what happened. We got a console log that came from our module, and we see the console log, but our end users don't see it. And then we also got the error thrown to us inside of our test page where we alerted it. So this is kind of cool because if you want to, you can show your users an error, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So that's kind of a cool trick here. Okay, let's see. Let's go ahead. I'm going to actually cut and paste code just to make things go a little bit faster for the video. You can pause if you need to type in the code here, but things should start to speed up here now. So let's move down to the get book by ID function here in our component or our module, whatever you want to call it. Here we go. I'm going to copy the code and paste it in here. It'll look a lot like the one that we have up above. Let me just point out a few things here. First of all, this function has a parameter. It's the ID of the book that you want to get. Okay, so what we need to do is make a GET request. So we're returning axio.get. This time we're appending that ID to the URL. So you're starting to learn how we make these calls to these back-end web services. So that will append the ID to the URL. So, and then everything else is the same as what we saw before. We want to take the response object and strip out the data and then return just the data. And then if there's any errors, we've got our error handler right there. Okay, so that's how you want to set up the get book by ID here. Go ahead and save that. Now let's go over to our test page here and let's see what we need to do here. Over here, I'm going to scroll down to this alert to do get book by ID. I'll just comment that out. Okay, I don't have a whole lot of typing to do, so I guess I'll just type it in here. Let's set it up this way. Let's declare a constant called ID, and we'll prompt the user to enter it. So we'll just make it say, enter a book ID. Okay, that'll give us the ID, and then that's what we'll pass into get book by ID. Okay, so here we're going to call get book by ID, and then we're just going to pass in whatever they entered into the prompt. And then it's going to return a book. So here's my then. I'll put in a book param. And there's our arrow function. And we'll just go ahead and console log the book. I could put a catch here if I wanted to. If I don't, we'll just see the console log when there's an error. But if I wanted to, I could alert the error with a catch, just like what we did up here. Okay, but I'll just leave that off just to get things moving here. Okay, save that. Go back over to the browser. It should have refreshed for me, but I'll press the button anyways. Go ahead and enter, click that button, get book by ID, enter an ID of 1, and click OK. Why did that happen there? I forgot to change the URL back. So I got a 404 error. So I need to fix the error that we planted before. So we'll go back over here and it should be books, not book in the base URL. So I'm going to fix that. Things should have reloaded here. Now I should be able to get a book by its ID. There we go. There's our book. Okay, pretty cool. So you see what we're doing here is we're building a component that makes AJAX calls for CRUD operations. And complex apps are usually just a bunch of CRUD applications. And you're going to see that when we start working on the final project for the class here. All right, let's move on here. Go back over to our blog data access JS file, and let's work on the insert book here. I'm going to copy and paste that. It's going to look real similar to what we had before. Here's what it's going to look like. Paste it right here like that. Okay, now to insert a book to a web service, we need to do a post request. So we call axios.post. That's the method. We give it the base URL. And then we also need to give it the book that we want to have inserted here. Okay, we're just going to take the parameter that somebody passes into insert book and then pass that through to our post request. Everything else is the same. We're going to strip out the data from the response, and then we can catch any errors right here. Okay, so there's what you want to type in for that line of code for the insert book. Save it. Go on over to the test page here. Scroll down to the alert that says to do post book. Okay, and now we're going to need a book to post here. So let's see. So let's just create a book object that we can add here. Let's go const new book equals an object. Now this has to have a title and I'll just make it say some book, and then it also has to have an author, and I'll just make it say some author. Okay, now we don't need to give it an ID because the JSON server is smart and it will add the right ID when it adds the book to its collection here. Okay, so we've got a book. Now we can call our insert method. So insert book, and then we pass in, the way we have this set up, we pass in the book that we want to insert. That's our new book variable. And then we'll go ahead and attach a then here. And then it's going to respond with a book. Now the difference between this parameter, book, and new book, the one that we're giving it, is that this one's going to have the ID that gets assigned to it. Okay, so here we'll just go ahead and console log the book, and then we can try it out. So there's what that line of code should look like. Save it, and then go back over to the browser. Let's post a book and see what happens. Oh, interesting. What happened there? Why don't I see the console log? All right, it's refreshing the page. That's really strange. What did I do wrong here? Okay, I'm not really sure what's going on. That's really strange. I've never seen that before, but the books are getting posted. If I look over here in the JSON file, I can see that here's all the books that are getting added. The other thing that I'm noticing here that's very strange, and I've never seen this before, is that the IDs are strange numbers. They're not usually, it adds, oh, okay. I'm wondering if it's because the IDs are strings here instead of numbers. That's probably what's going on. Those should probably be data typed as numbers. Anyways, and I don't know if that's why we're getting the strange behavior. Here, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing here, but let's try something. I'm going to go ahead and go back to just the 3 books that we started with. So I'm going to delete all, now be careful here, but I'm going to delete all the book objects that we inserted with our posts. I don't know how many you did, but I inserted quite a few. I'm going to go back to our original book. Okay, I think, yes, I bet that here's the problem. That should be, those should be numbers. Now, maybe I'll change this so that you don't have to deal with this. Maybe when I give you these files, I'll have fixed this already, but I wonder if that's what the issue is here. So the IDs probably should be numbers and not strings. So I just removed the quotation marks. Let's see how it behaves now. If I do, I'm going to open up the console log. Did it refresh again? Let's see. Try this again here. It did. That's strange. Okay, I'm not exactly sure why it's doing that, and I've never seen that before. But now, and it's still adding those as strings. Maybe I have to restart the server. Okay, here I'm going to try this again. Sorry, you guys have to fumble with me, but you guys know things go wrong. Things can go wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and set that back up to the way it was originally. And now I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to kill the server here. So here's the terminal where the JSON server is running. I'm going to do Control-C, kill it, and then I'm going to restart it and see if that's the problem. All right, just refresh this here, and we want to post a book. Nope, it's still doing it. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. All right, strange. Okay, I'm not really sure. Anyways, we'll move on. Let's go back to VS Code. Boy, that's bugging me, but I just want to move on here. And so the inserts are working. There's some strange behavior that we could look into. Let's go on to the update book here. So here's the code you can put in there. It's very similar to what we had before. I'm just going to copy and paste it in here so you don't have to watch me fumble with my typing. There we go. There it is. So here, in order to update a resource on a web server, we use a put request. So we call the put method of Axios. Here, and notice that there's a parameter that you pass in to update book. So that's presumably going to be a book with an ID, a title, and an author property. We need to attach the ID to the URL. This is how the server knows which book it's supposed to update. And then we also pass in another parameter, and that's the book with the updated information. Okay, then the rest is all the same as what we've been talking about right here. So there's the code for that function. Go ahead and save it, and then go back over to the test page right here. And let's do this. So we have a book in here that has a problem, and we're going to update it. If I look at the JSON file, I have a book, its ID is 3, and its title is Harvey Popper, but it should be Harry Potter. You guys know that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to the test page, and then you can comment out this alert right here. And then we're going to go ahead and create a book. Let's go const book equals, and here we want to update the book with the ID of 3, and we want to set the title to Harry Potter, and then we want to set the title to J.K. Rowling's, that's the author. Okay, and that's going to be the book that we want to update, and here's the updated information for that book. Okay, now I can go ahead and call update book, and then I just pass in the object that we just created, and I'll put a then here. Now, you know what? Now in this case, I don't really care about getting a response from the server. When you do a put request, you don't need to get anything back from the server, so I'm just going to skip the then altogether. What I really want to know is if there's an error. If there's no error, then that indicates that the book was successfully updated. So I am going to add a catch here because I do want to know if there's an error. And I'm going to take the error object and pass that in as the parameter to my arrow function. And here I'm going to alert it so that we can see the error. Okay, all right, so yes, with put requests, you don't really get anything back from the server. All you get back is a status code, and if the status code is 200, then it's successful, and if the status code is anything else, then we're gonna have an error. Okay, so save this. I'm wondering if we're gonna see the same strange behavior as we did with the posts, but let's see what goes on here. I'm gonna refresh this, hit the put button here. Okay, now that also did a refresh. I don't know what's going on here, but wait a second, did I save my changes? I did. Okay, let's look in. I want to see if the data actually got updated. Oh, look at that. The author didn't get put in there. What is going on? All right, things are falling apart fast here. I'm going to pause. So here's my problem. This right here for the book, that should be the author property. Okay. So let's fix that. I wasn't paying attention there, but the book should have a title and an author property. Okay, let me try this again here. Now I'm going to reload the page, hit our put book button. Now the console, what is it? Oh, okay, we don't expect anything in the console. I don't know why the page is refreshing. That's kind of bothering me. But if I go back and look at the actual data, there I can see that it worked. So it updated book 3 to be Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling's. All right, now, oh man, things are getting messy. But coding can be messy. It's not always fun and easy. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to change this ID to something that doesn't exist, like a bunch of 7s. Okay, now let's see what happens here. We should see our alert here because it's going to catch that as an error. So if I go back over here, reload the page, hit the put book button, there we go, there's our error. It's saying 404 means we don't have that resource, meaning that there is no book that has an ID of whatever we set it to. Okay, so there's our error handler right there. Okay, and it didn't refresh the page that time. That's interesting. Something strange is going on, but I'm going to try to ignore it. Okay, go ahead and change that back to 3. And then we're almost done here. We want to just do deletes now. So scroll down to the alert that says to do delete. I'm going to comment that out. And then we're going to put in this code. We need to actually update the delete book function here first. Okay, I'm going to copy that and paste it for you. It looks real similar to all the other stuff we've been doing, but here is what it should look like. So we need to make a delete request. So we call the delete method on the Axios object. And then you basically tell it what to delete by passing the ID and attaching that to the, or concatenating that to the URL. Okay, so that's how it's going to know what book to delete right here. Okay, so, and then everything else is the same. We've got our then and our catch. Okay, now save that, go back over to your test page, comment out the alert that says to do delete book, and let's go ahead and do this. Const ID equals prompt, enter ID of book to delete. Okay, and then here we're going to go ahead and call delete book and then pass in that ID. We don't really care about getting a response back. So I guess I can just catch an error if I want to. Now here we're already catching errors and console logging them. So we'll try this in a couple of different ways here. Let's see. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's pick a book to delete here. It's weird. I've never seen these IDs like that. Let's go ahead and just delete book 3. So we'll go back to the browser, reload the page, hit the delete book button. We'll delete book 3. And now we don't care about getting a response back, but there was no error, so we assume that it worked. So now I'm going to go back over to the data file, and it should no longer be there, and book 3 is no longer there anymore. Okay, one more thing here. Let's go ahead and try to delete book 3 again. Now this time I'm going to get an error because book 3 doesn't exist. Now I'll get an error in the console log, but we won't see an alert error here. So go ahead and try that again. And there's our error. It says request failed with a status of 404, meaning that there is no book with an ID of 3. It doesn't have that book anymore because we had already previously deleted it. All right, this is a long video. I think I'm going to end it, but I'm going to make a second part to this video because I want to show you how we can use async and await. So when you're dealing with promises, there's 2 ways to do it. You can use then and catch, or you can use async and await. So I'm going to save that for another video, but that one should go much quicker than this one. Okay, there you go. There you have it. Let me know if you have any questions.